Hey, would you like to work less and make more? Well, we have David Warlow here who is going to tell us all about that, how that way you can enjoy life, because life is limited. There's a limited number of hours, and you don't want to be working yourself until you drop. You want to be working smarter and not harder. David is the guy to talk to us about that. David, glad to be talking to you.
Thanks, Robert. There's three keys that I believe people need to do three key steps rather, that people need to do if they want to work less and earn more. There's only X number of hours in the week, and therefore, if you're earning $1 an hour, $100 an hour, $1,000 an hour, $1 million an hour, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're earning, if you're doing everything yourself, all you can do is earn that number of hours in the week. What is it, 168 hours in the week? So that's where your income is capped. If you're, as they say, trading time for money. So the three keys are: 1, systemize; 2, outsource; and 3, remove yourself from your business. Obviously, I'm talking to business owners here, not to employees that work for people, because they unfortunately can't do this apart from becoming business people themselves. So it doesn't really matter whether you've got one business, 2 or 3 businesses, or 300 businesses. Each one will take a certain amount of time for you to manage. Now, if you've got like a small business that's like a one-man show or one person show, to use the politically correct vernacular, you're doing everything yourself. You'll be doing the work that generates the income. You'll be looking after the bookwork. You'll be doing the advertising and the marketing, etc., etc., etc. Now, there's only so many hours in the day, as we said. So if you've got to try and do all that as well as do the work, then, well, you can't do it, because, like we say, there's only so many hours in the day. If you spend in a 24-hour day, let's say you slept for 8 of them, you played for 8 of them, and you worked for 8 of them, as most employees would do, then you've got 8 hours of work, productive work, which is going to generate your income. And then you can, if you're going to use your leisure time to do your paperwork and things, and or your marketing, then it just doesn't really, you're just working. So there are things that you need to, rather not need to, there are things that you can outsource to, be it a virtual assistant offshore, or to even to an account, like external accountant or marketing agency or what have you. And those people can take that load off your shoulders, so to speak. If you're good at whatever it is that you're doing, if you're a plumber, say you go out to do your plumbing and come home and do your books, you don't see your kids, or you might not, or your wife, or whatever it is that you might be looking at. And this is, I suppose, thinking about it from a tradesperson's perspective, but you could be an accountant, and you'd be working. I've known accountants that work 7 days a week. We used to have one up the road from one of our businesses when I was working on the weekends, and he'd come in at midday on Sunday. I said, "Oh, you're in again?" He says, "Yeah, we've got to finish off because I've got clients that need to do this," because that was the dedication that he was having to his business. But of course, what was he doing? Burning himself out. So,
And the way that you're explaining this is, it's almost like we fool ourselves into thinking that we have all this time in the week, but the way you put it, there's 168 hours in the week, and when you subtract all the time that's needed to rest and everything else, there's even less time. And then you're also saying that we might also be fooling ourselves into thinking that even like as business owners, we have 1, maybe 2 jobs, but the way you're describing it, it's like 5 or 6 jobs, right? There's the marketing, yes. There's the bookkeeping, and it seems like there's a lot of like less than, like say like that accountant or that plumber, that's what you could call like the most important job, the job that you see. But then there's like all these other jobs that are less important that support that business that were that like the accountant's scrambling and doing, and maybe even in fooling themselves into thinking that he's not doing like 5 or 6 jobs at once. It's crazy the way that you lay it out that way.
Mm, that's right. That's why if you've got your systems, well, the systems aren't so much aren't the important part for the taking the load off your shoulders for the sole operator. The systems are more in place for when you want to grow bigger and have not one business but 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. At one point, I was running. We had 3 retail shops, a consultancy, and another little thing. So I was running 5 businesses at the one. Well, actually, in the distribution, so 6 businesses all at the one time, and I didn't get much sleep till I worked out. Oh well, we've got to stop doing this and get such and such to do that task, and this person to do that task, and then all of a sudden you say, oh, okay, but if you systemize your business so that whoever's there, be it yourself or some employee or a business partner or whatever, if you've got it systemized correctly, then you'll know, okay, first thing in the morning, we need to do this, because if we don't do this, then this next thing and that thing and that thing won't get done, or they'll be out of sequence and you'll have to backpedal to fix everything up. If you have multiple similar businesses, like 2 shops of the same type, or 2 plumbing businesses or 2 electrical businesses, then the procedures that would flow in each one should be, if not the same, very similar. For example, if you're take the plumber again, okay, well, the plumber will start his day and he'll have a job. He'll go off to the job. He'll then do the job, complete the job. Meanwhile, hopefully his phone's rung a few times and he stopped what he's doing to take the inquiries for the next job that he might have, or a future job. Whereas if he had somebody in an office taking that phone call, then he could concentrate on the job, and instead of the 2-hour job taking 2 hours, he might get it finished in an hour and a half. Okay, you might say, well, okay, therefore you'll be able to charge less, but that's not charge less. If he's got a particular job takes 2 hours, if under normal circumstances, because he's got the interruptions of the phone ringing all the time, and he stops what he's doing to take the phone call. Now, he's charging the customer for that, admittedly, but if he didn't have to take that phone call and he was able to do that same job in an hour and a half, he could then go and do another job. So if he's got, especially somebody lining up the jobs for him, he just goes and does the jobs. So that's what I mean. If you had a system that was in place where the that particular task was not performed by yourself, taking the phone calls, somebody else was taking the phone calls and giving you the bookies at the end of the day for tomorrow. So
and I think that's huge right there. That whole idea of having different people perform different tasks. That way, there's not all this interruptions. There's not the multitasking, because the interruptions like that can really affect that, right? Like, you're doing a job, halfway through, you get a phone call, you stop, you take the phone call, you have to figure out what you were doing. And even when you resume the work, you're maybe even thinking about what was happening, and you're just completely distracted. And it's like,
exactly.
it affects us more than we think. And so you've been mentioning a few times about systems, about proper systems, and what does that look like? Because you hear about people saying, like, I'll have like an SOP, right? Or like some kind of like documents or some sort of a checklist. But you also mentioned about certain things being done at certain times. So when you talk about like making a system and having someone else perform a task, like, what does a system look like to you?
Well, you can have a system on a piece of paper if you want. I wouldn't advise it, but it's better than nothing. It's better than having it in the head, because you've got it in the head. The only person who knows what it is you. And therefore, if you're not there, the place falls apart. So if you're the only one that can do the job, and I'm not talking about very specialized jobs like the famous painter might say, I have the skill and the technique to make the painting as it is. Nobody else can do this. And that's probably quite true, but we're not talking about that sort of thing. We're talking about, okay, we're a painter, and we need to, a painter as in a house painter. We need to paint the wall. Okay, what do you do first? You go and buy the paint. What if the customer didn't like that color? So you would need to say, okay, I need to ask the customer, what do you want done? I'd like that wall red. Okay, fine. Well, it's currently black. So therefore, in order to get rid of the black, we need to do this, rather than just putting red paint over the top, because it won't work. That's just for an example. So varying scenarios would require different systems. So you need to have, basically, my favored way of generating a system is to, well, okay, think about it first and say, okay, what do I need to do? And then you map it out using flowcharts or mind map software, if you're that way inclined, or otherwise just getting a large sheet of paper and this first, etc. So they can always, there's always a way, as long as you've got it documented and that somebody can, and legible, so that somebody can look at it and say, oh, okay, right, we start here and then we come down and then we go here and here. Oh, and if this happens, then we go there. If it doesn't happen, we go down here, and then you just follow the system as a flowchart.
Interesting. That's helpful to think of it as a flow chart or a mind map, and so that way there's like the step by step combined with the decision making process, the if then else. That way someone can follow through there. And so, and you mentioned there about that whole concept of like one person just ending up at first running the entire business, and I can imagine that sort of thing can creep up because maybe like of ego, right? Like how you said, like they might compare themselves to a painter in some way, or even just being so busy, right? Saying like, well, I don't have time to systematize, I don't have time to hire someone else. And that might get you by at first. But as you've been mentioning, you end up burning out, or if you have a sick day, the whole business does not work. So do you see any difficulties with people systematizing, or any sort of resistance, or anyone saying like, well, I'm already working so hard, now I have to put more time and more money into this thing? Do you see anyone just coming up and having resistance towards this systematizing idea?
Absolutely. I couldn't give you a percentage of small business owners that just can't think in this manner. They say, I'm the business, this is my business, I'm good at my business, I'm a great plumber, I'm a great whatever, and that's what I do. So they carry on, and that's where they cap themselves at. They'll either burn out by trying to work harder, or they'll just run out of time to do the jobs, and therefore their income will never get will never grow, apart from the prices going up and stuff. But what I'm really sort of interested in doing is taking, we'll stick with plumbers just for a minute. If you're a plumber, you can work, let's say 40 hours a week and earn, I don't know, $100 an hour, just to use a number. So you've made $100 an hour for 40 hours a week, you make $4,000 in a week. And you might say that's pretty good. And whether it is or whether it isn't is relative. We just punch in whatever number you want to put in there. So many hours, so many dollars. If you put on an employee to help you because you're getting more business, then you've got to pay the employee. So let's assume that you've got enough work for the employee to do, and yourself, of course. So now you've got an employee you could actually make in gross revenue, just working on that same $100 an hour, because it's a nice easy number. Instead of having $4,000 per week, you can now generate $8,000 per week, assuming that you're fully booked. except you've got to pay the other guy now. What do you have to pay him? Let's keep it simple. Let's say you had to pay him $50 an hour. So he's getting half and you're getting half. So effectively, you're doing your work and you're making $100 per hour. The other guy is doing his work and you're making $50 an hour on what he's doing, which is common sense. Then you'd say, okay, well, that's good. Let's put on a third employee. Let's put on 50 employees. Let's put 1,000 employees on. But now all of a sudden, once you've started doing that, you're no longer plumbing. You're now becoming a human resource manager because you've got 100 staff. So how can you do that and go out and do your plumbing? You can't. So you say, okay, well, I won't do the plumbing anymore. I'll sit in the office and manage all these people. Now that's a great theory, or that concept might be all right in theory, but if you're a good plumber, that doesn't mean you're going to be a good manager of staff. That is the big thing. If you're a great manager, you might not be a good plumber. So what do? Well, let's hire a manager, and I'll keep on plumbing. So you hire a manager, you pay the manager, and the manager looks after the staff, the scheduling, the wages, all the office type work. Or they might not need a manager. You might just say, I need somebody in there who can do some of the lower level tasks, which is where I'm talking about the outsourcing. Now, some of those things can be very easily outsourced to, how could I put it, less expensive countries. And by doing that, you obviously reduce, instead of paying this amount of whatever for in your home country, you'll only pay this amount because therefore it's costing less because the cost of living, etc. And those people who are receiving that less money that you're giving them are actually being paid very well compared to their friends and what have you that might not be working in a similar environment. So if you've systemized this, not systemized, if you've got yourself, you've worked out that, okay, you're a good plumber, but you're not a good manager. So you've got your manager, you've got yourself as your plumber, but then all of a sudden you say, okay, I need to get bigger because I used to make this amount of money, I'll use a number. That's what I was making, I'll keep it simple. I was making $100,000 a year previously, working for myself as the one-man show. Now I've got a manager and 3 staffs, or 3 other people who are working for me. By the time I've paid everybody else, I'm only making $90,000 a year. So you say, oh, okay, I've actually got all this wonderful business, but I'm earning less. You say, oh, that's not a good idea, which is not. So then you'd say, okay, I need to work some things out here and see what's going wrong. Why have I earning less? But you say, oh, but I'm not working as much. But you say, yes, I am. Another scenario that's similar to that is you say, okay, I own one business. Let's call a retail shop. So I've got a retail shop that's generating, keep it again, $100,000 a year in net profit. And you're doing all the work. So you say, okay, I'm going to go and buy or start another business of a similar type in a similar location. And it also will make $100,000 per year, but I can't be in both places at once. So therefore, here I'm making 100, and I've got to pay somebody and all the other expenses, let's say 50. So now I've got one here that's making me 100 where I'm working, and this one other over here, that's where I'm making 50. So I'm making 150. Okay, you might be happy with that, but then you say, no, I need more. So you say, okay, let's start a third shop. So now you get 100 from this one, 50 from that one, and 50 from that one. Then you say, okay, let's have a fourth shop. And so it goes. But then you get to the point, I can't manage all these shops because they're in different spots. So you say, I need a general manager to look after all of those shops. And then all of a sudden, you've gone from 500, you've paid out 200, you're finishing up with 300, and just you have to work the numbers out, because I've lost track of where my numbers were, but you know what I mean. So once you've done that, you say, okay, I've got a general manager looking after all the shops, and each shop's got its own manager. But I'm not making 100,000 or whatever it was that I was making when I was working by myself. Yes, but you're not working. So you might say, look, I'm getting a net 80% of what I used to make by working 100 hours a week. And now I've got all these people doing this, and everybody's looking after everything else, and everything's ticking over nicely. And all of a sudden, oh, well, I'm making 80,000 for basically, I won't say doing nothing, but not actually being actively involved with the business. So once you've got yourself to that point, you say, well, okay, what's stopping us taking these, what we're up to 5 shops, taking it to 50 shops? All you need is another layer of management. And that's really the key to the scale.
Interesting. And it's interesting to hear your thought process here, as far as don't just do a flat hire all these people and throw work at them. You're saying, think about the hierarchy. If I can't handle all these people running the business, managing the phones, hire a manager to run all of them. And what I'm hearing a lot from you is that it's not just about the present, it's about the future, and that things need to scale and things need to be maybe somewhat optimistic, because it's easy to fall into that scarcity mindset of saying, well, I'm making, like you mentioned a few times, I'm making 100,000, and the only thought is, how much will my income drop, right? How much will my overhead be? And what you're saying here is that some of your income will drop because it goes over to these other people, but you're adding time. Because you as one person only have so much time, but if you hire other people, then you're adding more time, and you might take a slight cut in money to add yourself time. And then that's the thing where you can think things through and think about the process and put more people where they need to be, and scale. And then in the end, you win. But in the current present time, there might be a little bit of like difficulties, growing pains, figuring out the process, figuring out the people. Is that on the right track?
That's correct. Yes, it's a case of I lost it. If you grow too fast, then all of a sudden you can get yourself into trouble, because you need more people, and people come on, and then all of a sudden they don't have enough to do, and you're paying them to do nothing because there's no work for them, or they're not actually able to produce revenue for you. So therefore, if they can, you need to get it to the point where the first scale, or the first step in the ladder, is working to capacity or nearly capacity, and then you take yourself a step back. It's almost like saying, what's better, 100% of one or 1% of 100?
1% of 100.
I'll say that another way. Are you better off to have 100% of one thing, or 1% of 100 things?
Depends on what it is.
All things being equal.
I mean, I feel like 1% of 100 things is better. It feels like with that, there's more stability, there's more like variety. 1% of 100 feels a little like scarier, and it requires maybe more like leap of faith. But I feel like 1% of 100 has more growth in it.
It has to, because if you've got 100% of one, and all of a sudden something stops, what have you got? Zero. If you've got 1% each of 100, and 10 of those 100 stop for whatever reason, you've still got 90 or 90%.
You've diversified.
Yeah. However, having said that, there's also a theory that says, okay, what is it? Put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket very closely, rather than having eggs in all different baskets.
So it seems like there's a right size, right? And the same way that you're saying that there's a right speed to grow, it's possible to go too crazy and to just
Correct.
like hire 100 people. I want to have 100 retail shops, and then you shoot yourself in the foot. So that it's really it's interesting to think about that. There's number one, like the trap of being stuck where you are and not wanting to change and not wanting to grow, and that's a dead end. And then the other extreme is growing too fast. But somewhere in the middle there is thinking things through and keeping things practical and doable. And you've mentioned things like hiring people one at a time to fix problems as they happen. You've mentioned as far as making this flow chart. You said even if all you know how to do is have a big piece of paper and draw it with a pen and paper, if that's what makes sense, if that's what gets the job done, if that's what is used, then who cares about getting everything 100% right the first time? And so to help us kind of really wrap our heads around this, do you have an interesting like case study, success story where you've helped out with this? I know we've talked about a lot of like theory, but do you have a real story where you working your magic, applying systems and outsourcing and scaling? Do you have an interesting story to share with us about that?
Well, I could share my own story with my my own retail businesses that I have, which has probably been the it's probably the most successful sort of best example that we can use. We've grown from we started off with one shop. It was a little hole in the wall type newsstand. Had an area of 6 square meters. That's 3 meters by 2 meters. And that's where we started off, and kept that for a few years. Okay, there was probably no systems in that one, but you learn the business in that. Then we bought another. Actually, no, we did. We moved that. We moved that from where it was. So there was by looking at the not the demographics, the at the what do you call the demographics of the people, but the actual area of what's like the infrastructure and facilities and things that are in the area. Not quite as involved as infrastructure, but like where there's a bus stop here, or there's a pedestrian crossing, or is a shop that sells coffee, or whatever it was. Like
so just a better location.
That's right. So if you've got a business in one location, and you move it around the corner, you could find that your turnover triples. Why? Well, because nobody was going around the corner, or you were tucked inside a little arcade. Now, I said about my first shop there, it had 6 square meters. We moved it on the other side of the building, and then we moved it up the road in the building, up to a bus stop. And I can't remember the numbers, but turnover went from 5 to 100. Not overnight, but within 6 months. And it was just ticking over. And we attribute that to basically it was a fact of the location. Now, what we did when we did that, we engaged an accountant, because I wasn't skilled in that area in those days, to analyze the pros and the cons of doing a shift. Okay, the rent was going to go up significantly, but so did the foot traffic and the number of customers there, therefore the profit went up. So if the profit goes up, obviously, sorry, not the profit, the gross profit goes up. And then if the gross profit goes up and the expenses remain the same, then obviously the net profit increases. Now you take that a step further, say, okay, you've got that new shop in that location. So you know that that sort of location is good for that type of shop. For example, having a business of a particular type opposite the supermarket checkouts in a mall might be the best location for a particular business in retail. Now, if we're talking an online business, then that's a different thing again. But you might say, okay, I need to have a good website, if that was the case. or I need to have a better website or better page views, or whatever it might be. So after we took that one there, we sold that, and then we moved it, and we bought another one after a bit of a rest, and we moved it across the road. We operated it for 2 years, then we moved it across the road for another couple of years, then we moved it up the road to a different location, and of course the turnover just went up. So we've got to the point that the one business is doing quite well, but you're working 100 hours a week. So you got to say, okay, what do we do now? Well, we need to find something bigger. So we found some distribution, which is applying the same skills but to a different area. So we've put in the distribution. We've grown the distribution from being, how can I put it, this big to this big. And once it's done that, it of course grew. So, but of course the expenses grew as well. But either way, it was still generating more income. So by applying the same systems that we put into place for how to generate extra revenue from a given geographic area, if you can do that in 1 square mile, therefore if you've got the same demographics or the same sort of people in 10 square miles, then you should make maybe not 10 times as much, but 8 times as much. So that's how you would grow that. So if you go then to, after that, we did acquire another business, another shop, similar shop, but in a different location. And we just put the same procedures into place in there. Made sure that you had this, made sure that you had that, made sure this happened, that happened, etc., etc., etc. And then once that had happened, took a third one. We've subsequently got rid of the distribution. Now we just concentrate, and one of the shops that unfortunately, it's probably not relevant, but it burnt down. It was a major fire in a shopping centre, so the whole centre was destroyed. But after that, we moved on to towards online stuff and trying to basically give the benefit of our experience. But yeah, basically try and to anybody that would require or could use some of our assistance in implementing systems in their own business through consulting and that. And that's where we are at the moment.
And one thing leads to another, and even that one location burning down, I think that is relevant, because that shows that the path of your success is not a straight line. That it seems like from your thought process here, you had something that was working just okay, and then you thought about different factors that you could change, right? Like moving to the other side of the building, and maybe based on the data that you knew from what was working, you took different calculated risks, made different decisions, and any decision that you make has some pros and some cons and some unknowns. And it seemed like to help you solve those things, you really it seems like you always take an inventory of your own strengths and weaknesses. So if your weaknesses are accounting or knowing how this will work out, then it seems like you're not afraid to hire someone temporarily or consult with someone to help you make this decision, knowing that nothing is ever guaranteed. But I'm just from hearing from when you kind of add these other locations or change the distribution, you find something that's working good enough, and then you replicate your success into something else that's working. And so with all this talk of scaling, what comes to mind is that it scares a lot of people, right? Scaling sounds like something that might just completely become a huge beast and become out of control. So why do you think that you are not afraid of taking these calculated risks and others are? Why do you think that you can scale, but others are stuck where they're at? Any ideas?
I think a lot of people are frightened to let go of control. If you take yourself away from having total control over everything, which is it's a block. If you need to look at every invoice that comes in just to make sure that somebody hasn't overcharged you by 10 cents, and you want to fixate on that, almost it's not really the Scrooge mentality, but it's just we're so fixated on 10 cents. If you lose 10 cents, oh, that's the end of the world. If you've just got to take that out of your head and you say, okay, I know that nobody else can do this as good as I can. That might be your thought process. And you say, well, I'm damn sure that a lot of people can't do it as good as I can, but it can't be a case of nobody can. So depending on what the actual skill set that we're talking about is, now if we're, so for example, looking at decorating, I'm a terrible decorator. So I would say, okay, I don't know how to do that. But once we know that, okay, that's the planogram of how it should be done, because it's been made by somebody who's got more experience in that than I have, for example, and that becomes your system. You say, okay, staff, here's the planogram, do it. I didn't have to think about the planogram. I just knew that I could go to that person or that organization or whatever, get the planogram that we should be putting for that particular range of products in this particular location. And then you tell your staff to implement the planogram. Oh, how many of these should I buy? Oh, well, hang on, they're $1,000 each. So if they buy too many, it could have cost you $1,000. Okay, that's potentially a high level sort of decision. You say, oh, well, okay, we don't need to buy too many of those. If you need to buy more than one, or if you think you need to buy more than one, come and have a chat. So, but if it's only $1 or $2 or $5 or $10, don't bother me with it, because that's what the system says. If it's less than $10, you're authorized to buy it, or to buy X number of just whatever you sort of come up with as being applicable to your particular situation.
I like that example. Give up some control, and the cons of giving up control is that you won't see every last thing that goes on. But the pro in that is that that's less time for you. That's less space taking up your brain. And it seems like there might be some initial awkwardness, or there might be some maybe uncomfortableness in thinking in this new way. But does anything come to mind about ways people might not take action on this, ways people might shoot themselves in the foot or like set themselves up for failure in this process?
Failing to, not to implement, but failing to actually do anything. If you say, okay, I can't give up my control because I'm a control freak. So if that's what you want to do, well, you'll be stuck at that level because you can't do everything. And not only can you not do everything, but even if you can do everything, then you can do nothing else, and you can only do it in the one place. So in terms of control, you say, okay, if I'm going to give up this control, do I trust that person? Okay, if you don't trust that person, well, they're the wrong person for the job, one. And two, okay, if you've got a fair bit of control, like take, for example, back in the days of plenty of cash, a bank employee that's got access to, well, maybe not millions of dollars, but a lot of money in their little change thing that they put their money into. So if they wanted to steal, for example, $100 or one note every day, would it go missing? Of course it would. Sorry, would it be noticed that it's gone missing? Of course it would be noticed, because they'll have cross checks. So that's what you need to do. You need to give up your control of that particular process and get somebody else to check the work. So they do the order.
And what I'm getting from you here is that, so all this means that it does not have to be all or nothing, right? Is is outsourcing, systematizing, scaling does not necessarily mean that you don't even touch the business. You have these checks in place, like you're mentioning, so that way, even if you give up control over this, it still does not fall through the cracks. And even you mentioned the plumber example earlier. You can still do your plumbing, right? If you believe that you're such a good plumber, you can still personally do it, but you have other people managing the system for you. You might have other plumbers working for you. And so what I'm getting from all this is that there are lots of choices in front of us, and there are fun ways that we can kind of organize things into giving ourselves a better future. And that way we're not just running the hamster wheel. We're not just putting out fires. We can kind of think outside the box and maybe solve things more creatively to get to a different result than where we're getting, which for a lot of us might just be just the same old thing every single day, 7 days a week, running ourselves ragged, running ourselves tired. That does not seem like a life. We need to be systematizing, outsourcing, and scaling. And so if people are watching or listening to our conversation today and they say, this is what I need. I know that I should have been doing this years ago, but now I need to be on the right track. I need to contact David and his team to get things revolutionized, transformed. How do they contact you? How do they reach out to you? And how do they get systems added to their business?
Okay, systems.warlowconsulting.com.
Systems.warlowconsulting.com. And when they go there, what will they find there?
They will find a where do we put there? They'll find some information on that page, and they'll find contact details, and also a method of a method of engaging us.
Fantastic. And so that way, if they have a unique situation or what they think is a unique situation, they can tell you where they're stuck, what they're doing, what their business is. And so the place to go for that is systems.warlowconsulting.com. And as we shut down our conversation today, David, is there anything that comes to mind as far as either something we left out that's really important, or a lasting piece of advice that everyone with this problem needs to listen to?
I think, Robert, that a lot of people are frightened to do this stuff because they just can't let go. Everybody, no, not everybody. Most people with any sense of business acumen know that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and therefore there's more than one way to approach a problem. You can do it yourself and it'll be perfect if you're that good, or you can get somebody else to do it. Now you could show them how to do it, but here's the problem. This is just one quick thing about the systems. If you show someone how to do a particular job, that's fine, but what happens when they leave, or if they leave? You got to show the next person.
That's where you started. Yeah.
There's a classic word, is it? Train for the task, not for the person. Don't train the person, train for the task. So in other words, have some method of explaining what needs to be done and have it recorded, so that, oh, how do I do that? How do I start a Zoom call? Oh, I don't know. Watch the video. The video will show you what to do. Push this button, push that button, do this, plug this in, whatever. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I could give anybody that was thinking about, oh, gee, I've half know how to do this systemizing stuff, but I don't know how to implement it. So therefore, record it. Do one. Do I need to do this more than once? Systemize it. If it's one job that you'll never do again, then okay, just do it. But if you need to do, if you're going to have to do it again, systemize it and get someone else to do it, because it can't be that important.
You make it sound so easy, and we need easy because all of us are making it so complicated. So you say, if it's a job you're just going to do one time, do it. But if it's something that will be repeated, then show someone how to do it. But don't just stop there. Record it using, whatever screen capture recording there is or something like that. That way, it's showing someone else how to do it, but then it's also recorded for the next person, and it's more forward thinking. The place to go is systems.warlowconsulting.com. And thank you, David, for stopping by and sharing your expertise with us today. I really appreciate it.
No problems. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, Robert.